Hi everybody, this is Dana coming at you live from Philadelphia on behalf of the Karen Cares channel. I would kindly ask you to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. Leave a comment if you can. If you'd like more videos, tell me about what. My next video is going to include information on Project Mockingbird, which will be mentioned here in the today's little dialogue, if you will. Today's video was inspired by a meme, of all things, that was posted by someone apparently to be intentionally inflammatory regarding the trial of Derek Chauvin. The meme said that they don't understand why there is a trial because we all saw the murder. This shows an incredible ignorance for the rule of law. So we're going to go over the reasons why I don't believe that Derek Chauvin is going to be convicted of either first or second degree murder, why there is a chance that third degree murder charges will stick, and what are the conditions that I would have to use in order, that would have to be present in order for those first and second degree charges to stick. So the first thing that we're going to do is break down what each of the charges means, the specifics, the things that are required in order to prove first degree murder beyond a reasonable doubt, okay? So first degree murder requires the intent to kill, quote, willful and premeditated intent to kill, again, that was a quote, quote, again, after planning or lying in wait. Second degree murder charges mean that it was the death, the homicide, was caused by the offender's reckless conduct, and that the offender displayed an obvious lack of concern for human life. Third degree murder charges, it's sometimes considered a depraved heart murder. It also does not have to include an intent to kill in order to be considered third degree murder. So we're going to break that down a little bit further here. First degree murder. I'm not sure I know anybody who can really begin to defend the idea that he should be charged with first degree murder, which then brings up a question. Why do DA's offices tend to overcharge? Well, the reason they tend to overcharge is that they hope that the defendant's going to plead down so that they're not going to have to pay a prosecutor to go and handle the case themselves. And this typically works. With a case that's publicized, though, they had to know that that was never going to happen. So it is a little curious that they first charged Derek Chauvin with first and second degree murder, only adding third degree murder much, much later. A very, very unusual move, for sure. What it indicates, adding that third degree murder charge, is they know they're nowhere near first degree murder. But here's what you would have to think and believe, okay? So, Chauvin couldn't have possibly known that he was going to be called as a backup. He couldn't know that George Floyd was going to purchase drugs that day, or that the very sight of the cop would lead Mr. Floyd to consume those drugs. I also want to say at this early juncture, I am in no way judging or mocking him or his addiction. I myself have been, let's say this. So I was addicted to opioids up until 2008. 2008, yeah. So I was clean until a little bit after, let's say 2014. I had a bad back injury and again was prescribed, not only prescribed Percocet, but when the Percocet no longer worked, I was prescribed morphine. So I've been addicted to opioids. I know what this is like. I've actually relapsed and had to go back. It's hard, man. It sucks. Like going through opioid withdrawal. I could just do a whole video on what it means to go through opioid withdrawal. It would be like the ugliest, most raw experience you can imagine. Like you're like leaking from everywhere, like sweating from head to toe, like leaking in other places. Your eyes are watering. Anyway, I'm not mocking George Floyd's addiction, the position he was in. I think there's a lot we can say about how we treat drugs and whether they should be legalized or not, because drugs being legalized would have prevented all of this. So unless you think it was done on purpose, unless you think like there was a big conspiracy between a bunch of different departments, there's just no way that Derek Chauvin could have known that he was going to be called as a backup when George Floyd was in the middle of overdosing. That's just something he didn't know he was going to be walking into, okay? So then we get into second degree murder, which again is caused by the offender's reckless misconduct and displays an obvious lack of concern for human life. Now, what does reckless mean? I use my handy dandy dictionary, like the actual book, you guys, because I almost don't trust Google anymore. I strongly encourage folks to use a COSIA, is what I typically use when I'm looking for like non-biased information. But anyway, what does reckless mean? Reckless can be defined as careless, heedless, headlong, or irresponsible. Questions of second-degree murder, again, they don't always, you don't have to have intent, but you do have to have an obvious lack of regard for human life. Can we prove that? Can we really say that he had a reckless regard for human life? It doesn't appear that way. It doesn't appear as though he was treating Mr. Floyd in a way that suggested that he didn't care for his life. Mr. Floyd did say I can't breathe, man, I can't breathe. He said it 20 times while he was on the ground. You know how many times he said it before he was on the ground? Has anybody actually watched the footage? Please, I would love to talk to somebody that's actually watched the footage and has an educated opinion. That would be great. Okay, so we had one of the police chiefs go ahead and say on the stand that this is not a restraint method that they are allowed to use. We know that that's false because when we look in the Minneapolis PD handbook, we see this exact restraint being used. We also have someone who testified yesterday or perhaps the day before, possibly Tuesday, that this type of restraint, the kneeling on the back, again, not the neck. If you notice, they're changing the narrative from kneeling on the neck, which everybody rioted over, to kneeling on the back, which is a Minneapolis PD approved restraint method. It's actually considered less lethal than a taser. I got questions. So again, can we say that using a restraint method that the Minneapolis PD approved of is reckless? I just don't think so. Just don't think we're there yet. Or that it showed an obvious lack of concern for human life. Again, if you watch the body cam footage leading up to this, there's no evidence at all that he did not care for this man's life. It sounds like they were rather gentle with the guy in the beginning. His girlfriend, well, his side piece, did say that it's possible that he was having a mental health episode. So it seems as though they really were trying to treat him with kid gloves in this instance. He did ask to be laid on the ground. He did say that he couldn't breathe, but he had been saying that he could not breathe. So it's also not unusual for a suspect who's being arrested and knows he's going to be going away for a long time to try to make 102 excuses why he can't be arrested right now. He can be arrested in a little bit, but first he has to, I can't breathe. I got to catch my breath. You can't arrest me yet. Oh, I have to go to the bathroom. Can't arrest me yet. There's always something. So can we really call this reckless and you know, an obvious lack of concern for human life? Again, I don't see evidence of that. I see plenty of evidence of reasonable doubt. But then we get into third-degree murder. Third-degree murder requires a depraved heart. Again, it doesn't require intent. When we look at the word depraved, that means morally bad, corrupt, or perverted. I think we can throw perverted out the window. There's no questions there, right? Morally bad or corrupt. Again, if it's an approved method of restraint considered less lethal than a taser, I don't know that we can really say it's corrupt or morally bad. It sounds like he was trying to use a less lethal method, and he was trying to also manage a very difficult crowd at the same time. What I think is going to happen, I think that it's going to depend whether or not the jury, pardon me, it's going to depend on whether or not the jury feels like they have to convict Chauvin just so that there won't be any more riots or burning, which is hilarious because it's going to happen either way. It's just going to burn for longer, I guess, if he's not convicted of one of those three things. So the whole white racist cop targeting him, killing a black man for no reason, the whole narrative falls apart when we look at all these things. His actual girlfriend testified on the stand that the friend who said he was going to be, again, and I quote, the voice of George Floyd, that guy was not actually his friend. In fact, they didn't really like him so much, according to his actual girlfriend's testimony. And he was the drug dealer. Okay, guys? He sold them the fentanyl that he OD'd on. And I know that's uncomfortable. And I know nobody wants to talk about his past. But if we're not allowed to talk about his past, then we're not allowed to talk about Chauvin's past either. How about that? How about we keep it fair across the board? We want to tear apart every piece of that man's life, right? but we're not allowed to talk about the events that directly led up to the incident that you're trying to convict him for. All right, don't get me started. His girlfriend actually said that that was his drug dealer, which again suggests that he was purchasing drugs off of the guy before the cop got there. And then we also have George Floyd had OD'd on fentanyl and methamphetamines just 2 months before. Unfortunately, this means that he may have recognized that he was ODing and didn't have the mental capacity to like say that to the police officers. And it sounds like his side piece girlfriend that was actually there that day, it sounds like his side piece girlfriend never really told them either that there was possibly an overdose happening. His friend, who said he was going to be the voice of George Floyd, has since pleaded the fifth. His lawyer said he's pleading the fifth because he fears being incriminated and charged with third-degree murder. Interesting. Sounds like maybe he's a drug dealer that actually caused George Floyd's death. All right. None of this points to premeditation. First degree is just completely off the table. I just don't see any evidence for reckless action when it's a department-approved method of restraint. I think second degree murder's out the door. Depraved heart, maybe. The thing that I'm getting stuck on here, guys, is that he was leaning on his back or neck for 9.5 minutes. Approximately 6 minutes into this episode is when George Floyd became unresponsive. I would like to think that in that situation, I would be able to tell that someone had stopped breathing. But at that point, a large crowd had gathered. Some of them were attempting to get to the cops, and other people in the crowd were holding those persons back. They were cursing at the cops. I'm going to beat your you-know-what. In that moment, with the adrenaline just pumping through your body, and this big, huge man that's like, just towers over you, finally subdued, it's entirely possible that he didn't notice for those 3.5 minutes. I don't think we can assign a depraved heart to that. It makes me uncomfortable, but I just don't think we can assign a depraved heart to that. Why? Because if you were to come over here and kneel on me, that way I would not die. Especially if you're lighter than me and you're kneeling on my back. You can find videos of that, of people doing that and surviving. So it's entirely possible that minus the fentanyl and methamphetamines, that George Floyd would have lived through this. If drugs were legal, he would have never tried to run in the first place. Or not run, but hide the drugs in the first place. What happens from here? Riots have already been promised. We know they're going to happen. Stock up on food, stock up on ammo, make sure you have water, all the same stuff as before. I really don't think we had nearly as much to worry about because there's none of that Soros money backing it. You know what I mean? Antifa ain't going to be flying in from across the country for these ones. And we all know, let's be serious, a lot of times these riots, man, from what I've seen, the videos I've seen, it is always black-clad Antifa soy boy looking guys that come in and break the first window and then run away. They are the instigators, and since they're not going to have that Soros money backing them, maybe we won't see the burnings last as long this time. Hopefully we won't see 30 people die this time, because that's how many people died in the George Floyd riots of the summer of 2020. The jury pool members frequently stated when they were being voir dired by the... Is that the word? I think that's the word. When they were being questioned by the attorneys, they frequently stated that they were afraid to be on the jury because they were afraid of repercussions to their family, that, you know, they would be found out, that they would be doxxed, their family members would be doxxed or be physical harm. I'll tell you this, they don't think the side that's back in the blue and is all about law and order is going to come for them. So, you know, maybe take that into account when you decide which side you're going to come down on. Thank God, you know, these meme people. And this isn't directly to the person that posted the meme, because I know that that person is not necessarily saying they agree with that meme. Much like I'm not saying I agree that Derek Chauvin deserves to get let off for first and second degree, or that he deserves to be free or convicted on third degree. I'm just telling you what I think is going to happen. You know, if the jury is really afraid of the kind of macro repercussions of this case, it's entirely possible that they're going to vote to convict Chauvin on third-degree murder charges just to, again, to placate the mob, which is such a short-sighted thing to do. But that's what they do. So it's entirely possible that we will see Chauvin convicted. I don't think the riots will last as long in that case. They'll last a little bit longer if he's not convicted. It's entirely possible that they never charged him with manslaughter because they wanted to essentially give him an out. So maybe that's it. Where do we really go from here, though? You know, when we think about these people, these crazy leftists that are, you know, posting these memes that are dead serious about convicting this man of first-degree murder, I can't help but think of my father, who was a cop for 39 years at Philadelphia Police Department, and he rose to the rank of captain, and he also worked in reports control. So, I mean, he's been around, he's read a lot, he's very familiar with departmental policies and procedures, and he is a great resource when I am gathering information about this. But I think about, had my father been called to this, had he been surrounded by an angry mob, knowing EMS was on the way, knowing the backup was on the way but hadn't yet arrived, under those circumstances, George Floyd is not the only one feeling strained, feeling the adrenaline, feeling under duress. As much as these cops are trained, you can't help but feel scared in that situation too, as the police officer. Even if you're the one with the gun, you don't want to shoot anybody, clearly. So, you know, in order to believe that this guy is guilty of first or second degree murder, you really have to take this pretty far, okay? So something tells me that these people that are posting the memes, even if they were to listen to the past 4 weeks of testimony, even if they were to hold the manual in their hand and look at the picture of the officer doing the knee on the back restraint, even if they saw that it was printed as a less lethal restraint, they heard that for themselves, even when they heard those things, I still don't think that it would ever break through the years of Project Mockingbird programming these people have undergone. They've been listening to CNBC, NBC, CBS, all the alphabet news stations their whole lives. They're literally programmed at this point to accept whatever narrative they are fed without ever going further than that. Rather than looking at the facts and having the self-awareness to say, like, hey, maybe I've been fooled. It's time to reevaluate what I believe. They prefer to remain ignorant, parroting the nightly news points across social media for the dumbed-down public to consume. Instead, this is what you'd have to believe. You'd have to believe that the cop, who is using a department-approved restraint, premeditated, planned to kill George Floyd, not somebody else. He has to premeditate to kill George Floyd. He had to have known all of these things, okay? Somehow, he was lying in wait. He premeditated, he planned George Floyd, and then he lied in wait, waiting to be called in as backup that day. Okay? This requires an intricate web of lies. All right, between Chauvin, the other 3 officers that were there at the scene, dispatch who sent him to the scene, the entire police department, and the owners of the store that originally called the cops in the first place. We don't talk a lot about them, but I'm pretty sure that there is no greater conspiracy going on there. You know, if you believe that, maybe you're becoming like a Blue Anon conspiracy theorist or something? I don't know, guys. Let me know what you think of this video. Do you think Derek Chauvin will be convicted of first, second, or third degree? Will he be let off completely? How long do you think cities will burn for? Please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Have a great day. Bye.